Hi, this is David Lee for Outside the Book here at the Southern Kentucky Festival of Books. And we're joined by Jean Auel, the author of the Earth Children series, 6 books. The first book is The Clan of the Cave Bear. Most recent book is The Land of Painted Caves. 6 books. Jean tells me 1,700,000 words, a pretty impressive output. Jean, I guess my first question is, you've said that you wrote the first book in this creative burst.
Yes.
But it's been almost 9 years since the 5th book. I know your fans have been wondering, where's the 6th book? Where has the 6th book been?
Well, I actually, in that creative burst, what I did was write a big mass that has ended up being the outline for all 6 books. So it wasn't really just the first book. And then I went back and realized, after doing several things, that it was the first book of 6. But there is still a big space of time between this last one, 9 years, and there was 12 years between the 4th and the 5th book. And my only excuse is, I guess I'm getting lazy. I don't know. It's sometimes life gets in the way. When I started out, I had 5 children, and I had 3 daughters in college and 2 sons in high school, and now I've got 5 kids and their spouses and 15 grandkids and 8 great-grandkids, and, life gets in the way.
Well, this is the Land of Painted Caves.
Yes.
Why do you think art was important to people 30,000 years ago?
Because we invented art. They were the ones who invented art, and they're our great-grandparents. So it wasn't until modern humans came on the scene that art came on the scene. So, actually, I have to tell you the truth. When I hear of schools thinking that they're going to save budget money, because they're going to cut out the art programs, because that's how we're defined. Because there was no art before we came. It's the earliest art in humanity's history. And it came on the scene almost full-blown. I mean, we're talking about horses and cattle and mammoths and lions and these kinds of things. And they're beautiful and they're wonderfully made, and they're done with, in 3-dimension and all of those qualities. And they also used, the bumps and the dips on the cave walls to add dimensionality to it. So then, of course, when you come through with a flickering firelight, because you got a torch or you got a grease lamp, and that light flickers and that changes the shadows, and the shadows then, make them look like they're moving. I mean, those guys knew what they were doing.
When you're in these caves yourself and looking at this work, how do you feel? What's in your mind?
No. The first cave that I was ever in was Lascaux. And there are 3 crown jewels. It's Lascaux, Altamira in Spain, and the new one, Chauvet, which was just found in 1994. And I have been in all of the caves that I mentioned in that book. I've been in, except for one small one that I couldn't find someone to show me, so I had to get that from reading sources. But when I first went into Lascaux, and there's this whole process you go through, because when people go in there, they damage the cave just because of living, because when we breathe out carbon dioxide, and the caves are calcium carbonate, and it affects the caves. So they have really put a limitation on it. Even Lascaux, they only allow, I think it's no more than 5 people a day for no more than 45 minutes. 1 day a week they give it a rest, or they used to, I think they still do, and 1 month out of the year, to try and let people see it, but not in crowds. But it was marvelous, because you go through this process of, you go into this one room and your eyes start getting adjusted to the light, then you go into the next room, and then you finally get to one and you dip your shoes in a solution of formaldehyde and antibiotics, I understand. And finally you go through the last door, and they keep the lights dim, because bright lights will fade things. Even rock art, it'll fade. And so, I'm watching my footing, and I'm going down, and finally it's a ramp to go down, and finally I get to the bottom, and there's a railing there, and I hang on, and I look up, and I go, And I am just overwhelmed. I mean, I'm holding my breath, and I didn't even know it. And then I start to breathe again, and I'm in tears. It's so fantastically beautiful. And you can't imagine that this stuff I can understand why the people who first saw it couldn't believe how old it was. Because, that's 25,000 years old. And it's hard, it looks so fresh because the cave had been sealed up. So nobody was getting into it. Nobody was doing anything except, just the natural processes. And that's the way it is. Chauvet is the same way. All of these caves are painted with more than one color. So it's multicolored. Mostly red and black is what they use, but still red ochre and black charcoal or black manganese dioxide.
One of the reasons your books encompass 1.7 million words is the details are very important to you, and your acknowledgments are to long lists of distinguished and careful scholars. Why are those details so important to you?
Well, as a novelist, you never know who's reading your books. And if you read a book and it's got something in it that is wrong, then you don't want to read that book anymore because you can't trust it, right? So I'm trying to make it as, for all the people who may know something, I want to make it as accurate as I can so that they can read my book and they can suspend their sense of disbelief and believe it could all be true. And that's what all writers of fiction want.
You have an MBA.
Yes, I do.
And your business plan was to write a wildly successful book about a 5-year-old girl who lived 30,000 years ago. How'd you ever sell that?
People said I'd never sell it. And of course, if I had planned to write a bestseller, I would not have picked Upper Paleolithic Caveman as my subject. I don't know where the idea came from. I thought I was looking for a job. I'd quit my job because I didn't see that the future was in that company, even though they paid for my MBA. You got to remember, I'm on the leading edge of that wedge. I mean, there were not very many women in business yet, and they were just starting. And so it was, I wanted to go off and find something else wonderful in business, and that's what I thought I was going to do. That's what I got my degree in. But then I got this idea for a story, and this idea was of a young woman or a girl who was living with people who were different. And I didn't mean just superficially, not different color hair or eyes or skin, but actually substantially different, significantly different. And I don't know why, I just thought it would be an interesting idea. And so I had her living with these people, but of course they thought she was different because, like beauty, differences in the eyes of the beholder. And so she was, they were letting her stay because she was taking care of an old man with a crippled arm. And I don't know, I have no idea where that came from. It's just something buzzing around. No writer can really tell you where the ideas come from. So I thought my husband was going to bed. It was, after the news when we usually go to bed. And he said, come on, it's getting late. And I said, no, I want to see if I can write a short story. I had never written one before, but, he knows I'm a little off the wall, so it was okay. And I sat down and started to do it. And what happened is that I got about, I don't know, three hours into it, and I was realizing that this was fun, except I didn't know what I was writing about. Who were these people, and what did they look like, and what did if you write a contemporary novel and you can say, he got in his car and drove into the city and had lunch. No problem, doesn't matter what city. It can be Bowling Green, it can be New York, it can be Tokyo, it can be Johannesburg, any place, Everybody knows what that means. But where does a caveman go to have lunch?
That's a wonderful way to kind of hook into the story. Where does a cave person go to have lunch? And I hate to stop this. You've got a fascinating story, and you've written a fascinating story.
Thank you.
Jean Auel, thanks for being with us on Outside the Book.
Thank you very much.
We're here at Outside the Book, and we're joined this time by Rick Robinson, a former legislative aide to Jim Bunning, a man who has experience in politics from the city council level to the highest levels of national government. He's an attorney in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, and in his spare time he does a little writing, and his books include the Maximum Contribution, Sniper Bid, and most recently Manifest Destiny, all of them winning pretty significant national awards. So Rick, thanks for being with us on Outside the Book.
Great to be here, Dean. I'm glad to be part of this.
What gets you started writing with all the other kinds of things that you could use your time to do? Why write?
Well, I got interested in writing 30 years ago when I met Jesse Stewart. And then when I was a kid, a teenager, I got to spend a day with Jesse Stewart. And I knew somewhere in the back of my head that I wanted to write something someday. I'm the classic guy of everybody has a book in them, and I spent 30 years writing the wrong book. I tried to write a coming-of-age novel similar to what Jesse Stewart had done, and realized I had never come of age. and then somebody said to me, well, why are you trying to do that? You have all these stories from being on the political trail for 30 years. Why don't you write a political thriller? And the light bulb went off in the head, and 30 days later I had 150 pages, and 30 days after that I had 3 publishers that wanted it, so it just kind of took off from there.
So you went from literally 0 to 60 in 2 months.
I went from 0 to
days.
60 in a very short amount of time, and it's been a fun ride. I thought this would be one of those bucket list items that when I wrote the first one that there would never be the second one, but the first one took off, the publisher wanted more, and now it's really become a second career.
Tell us about Congressman Richard Thompson.
Well, Congressman Richard Thompson is the main character in my books. I write all my books in a series, but I also write them as freestanding novels, so you can pick up any one of the novels and you don't feel lost. I give you the background and the story of all of them. But Richard Thompson is really an accumulation of all of the people that I've worked for over the years, all of the everybody from Jim Bunning and the senators, both Mr. and Mrs. Dole, and people down to city council races that I've worked on. So it's kind of an accumulation of all the personalities that I've known in politics over the years.
If we pick up one of your books and read through them, are we going to recognize some folks in there?
The names have been changed to protect the guilty. But it is funny. I do have people constantly coming up and asking me if a character is one person or another, and really they are just an accumulation of people that I've known. Now the one thing is there are characteristics of people that I've been able to work with and know over the years. The other character that's in the book that takes a prominent role in all the books is Michael Griffith, who is his campaign manager. And Michael Griffith has a lot of the characteristics, in particular, of Lee Atwater and Roger Ailes. Those are 2 people that I worked with on my very first campaign with Jim Bunning. We were able to put together Atwater and Ailes and as part of our team. And so there are actually a lot of characteristics of those 2 guys in the books.
You've run for Congress yourself. Does that experience get woven into these books at all?
Yes, it does. You know, that in 1998, the voters of the 4th District of Kentucky found out that I was a better writer than I was a candidate.
They gave you a career boost.
And they gave me a career boost in the writing end. But there is a lot of the stories from the road that weave their way into the book. You know, the one thing that when I started reading political thrillers and taking a look at what was in my genre, was that I found that the political thrillers happened to take place in Washington. They weren't really about politics. So what I wanted to give the reader the feel of was, I wanted the reader to know what it was like to spend 5 days on a campaign bus tour, along with the thriller aspect, and to really get that idea of what it's like to be in the middle of a campaign.
Your books have been praised considerably for the authentic feel they have. They have a dimension that really takes you inside the political experience. What do you think gives you a special eye for that? There are a lot of folks who see that but can't necessarily translate that to the written word. What's the bridge there for you?
I think a lot of people who are get into the writing business are afraid to get onto the political side because they might turn on or off a reader because of a political view. I actually dive into those people. I want that person. I want that person to read. I tell people, I write political thrillers. If you love politics, you'll love my books. If you hate politics, I kill politicians. So I have something for everybody. But my book is really, the people that really get into reading my books it's been interesting that people that watch Chris Matthews' show like him just as much as people that watch Bill O'Reilly and Hannity. It's the left and the right because they do like that authentic feel of what it's like to be the new person on Capitol Hill or the person on the bus tour.
You said you wrote your first book in 30 days. Is that still your pace, or does it take you a little longer to do?
Well, no, it takes a little longer. What I've done and what has been helpful to me over the process of writing is that, again, I thought the first one was going to be a bucket list item, but then when the publisher said she wanted more, I actually did start down and learning a little bit about the craft of writing a thriller and taking a look at some of the people who are very, very good at it, guys like Harlan Coben, female writers like Lisa Scottoline, talking with them, talking about their craft and how they develop things. And that was really what came about in Manifest Destiny, was that, and why it's actually been named the Independent Book of the Year, was
absolutely.
that I actually started learning a little bit more about the craft. In fact, in writing that book took a much longer time to write because I got to a point in it and kind of scratched the head and go, I don't know how this book is going to end yet. And had to figure out how it was all going to come together.
Well, I hate to say, but we have to end too. Rick Robinson, thank you for being with us on Outside the Book.
David,
Rick is the author of Manifest Destiny. Joining us now on Outside the Book is Karen Angelucci. Karen's a native of Cynthiana, Kentucky. She lives in Lexington now, and she's the author of 3 books in particular: Secrets of a Kentucky Gardener, Secrets of Tennessee Gardening, and Grimy, Grubby Gardening, which focuses on gardening for elementary students, and she's particularly interested in children's outdoor education. Karen, thanks for being with us on Outside the Book.
Thanks for having me, David.
When did you discover that you had a green thumb?
Oh, probably discovered it when I was probably an adult, but I've been doing it since I was 5 years old. So I've known about it a long time, and I like to get in the dirt, and I like to play with flowers, so I've known it my whole life.
I can glance at a potted plant, and it will positively wilt.
Well, you need an artificial plant.
Well, what's in your book for me?
What's in there? Well, each chapter, which my book is set up, the Kentucky book is set up month to month. So you just go to the month that you're in. Every month has a section on houseplants. Every chapter has a section on vegetables and fruits, and so it depends on what you want to learn. So you would go to April and you would look up houseplants, and it would say, David, don't overwater. Or David, if it's sunny out, don't put your plants out in the full sun. So it would guide you to take care of your plants.
Are you a vegetable gardener, a flower gardener, an herb gardener?
I do many facets of gardening. One thing, I'm not a big composter, although I know a lot about it, but I'm more of the beautiful part. The landscaping part and the flowers is more interesting to me. But I do grow veggies and herbs. I grow herbs to garnish my takeout food because I don't cook a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm a gardener. I don't have to cook, right?
What roughly are the dimensions of your garden?
My garden expands all the way around my house. So I'm one of these, I'll throw a tomato in wherever, as long as the sun is there. The house I live in now is not full sun, so I'm pretty, I have to be choosy what I grow and where I grow it. But I garden it all over the yard.
What gives you a particular interest in children's education and children's gardening?
Well, I think it's it's not a new movement, it's a renewed movement maybe, but children are so disconnected with nature right now. I call it unplugged fun. They need to go out without their mom's Blackberries and without the iPad, and they need to touch nature and smell it and see it and just be out there and take the focus away from even written material, and they just need to get out there and connect with it. So I don't discourage them from taking a book outside, but I would like for them
particularly if it's your book.
Right, well, of course. But I want them to go outside, and it's a huge problem in our whole nation. We've got to get our kids more connected, and they need to know where the tomato comes from, and it doesn't have to, they know that it comes in a tomato package from McDonald's, and the ketchup that's the tomato, and they need to know what it looks like in real form. So we've got a lot of work to do.
If I look at your book for what I should be doing in my garden in January, what will it tell me?
In January, it's going to tell you to prepare for seed starting. So there's a lot of supplies you can gather. It's going to tell you about how to harvest, I'm thinking January. It's going to talk about, what to order. I do a little bit more education in the January and the winter months because you can't do some hands-on. So I'm going to tell you where to get your seeds, buy local, what to shop for, how to buy the bulb, what it looks like. If it looks like an onion, it shouldn't be rotted, So I do a little bit more education reading in the winter months because you can't get outside. And I may tell you not to hit your shrubs with a broom if they get iced over, things like that. That'll damage your trees and, just guide you through the winter. I'd also tell you to sit down and read a book and have a cup of coffee. So.
Now, I like that advice. I could work with that
You
from
can
a
do
gardening
that.
perspective. That's something I could do well as a gardener. Karen Angelucci, thanks for being with us on
David.
Outside the Book, Secrets of a Kentucky Gardener.
Appreciate it very much.
Enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks.
And we're back on Outside the Book with Jennifer Bradbury. Jennifer is a Kentucky native. She's from Owensboro. She's a Western Kentucky University graduate. She had one of the most intriguing honeymoons I've encountered. She bicycled from Charleston, South Carolina to Los Angeles, California, featuring 50 flat tires along the way. Her first book, Shift, was picked as an ALA Best Book for Young Adults, and her new book, Wrapped, will be released next month. So, Jennifer, thanks for being with us on Outside the Book.
I'm really excited to be here.
What got you started writing young adult fiction?
Well, I wasn't going to be a writer. I actually came to Western as a journalism major, so I was thinking about writing that way. But I switched into English because I fell in love with my English classes at Western, and then got a teaching credential along the way. And then when I was teaching high school English in Washington, where we live now, I didn't have a lot of books I could give to my students to read. I hadn't read much young adult lit. So what happened was I read about 300 novels over the course of my first year of teaching. Yeah.
So about a novel a day.
Pretty much. So I could basically chase those kids around the library and say, read this one, it's perfect for you. And kind of along the way, I just fell in love with these stories and the variety of young adult lit, and it looked like so much fun, I just wanted to try it. And that's kind of where it started.
What gave you the idea that you, as a young woman, could write successfully about two teenage boys taking a bicycle trip?
I actually didn't have that idea. I was terrified because I'd written 2 books that will never be published. I kind of learned to write books from writing those 2 things. And when I was preparing to write Shift, and I was thinking I had this great idea for the story and everything else, I was really debating, can I write for guys? Can I write 2 boys' voices? And it really came down to the way they were going to communicate, and I said, I have to try it, and it just worked out really well. One of the best compliments I got was my brother-in-law. When he read a draft of it, he said, I always knew you'd make a great guy, which was, sort of off-putting at first, but then I kind of liked what he said. I understood what he was saying. And I think it just was a product of having been, an observer of the guys in my classes when I was teaching, and I worked at a boys' camp in North Carolina for 5 summers, and my husband always joked that they sort of forgot that I was a girl after a while. I was like that lady in the forest with the gorillas, and they started eating things out of her hair. And I just got to listen and kind of absorb those voices, and I think that helped me with writing Shift.
Do you ever share any of your manuscripts with your students?
I do. The first 2 books I wrote, I read portions of aloud to my students in my classes, my 9th grade writing classes, because Dr. Lenore and Dr. Flynn and Dr. Hageman all drilled into me how important it was to share your own writing with your students if you really want them to write well and write with commitment. And I got amazing feedback from my kids, even on just partial pieces. And I mentioned those kids in the acknowledgments in my first book, because they taught me tons.
It's a big shift from Shift to Wrapped.
Yes, it is.
Give us a quick introduction to Wrapped, since it hasn't been released yet.
Wrapped it's a historical fiction novel for youth, and it opens at a mummy unwrapping party, kind of in the summer of Waterloo in London.
1815.
1815. Yeah, good job. You took your history, and I'm very excited about it. It's kind of a book. My husband describes it as Jane Austen meets Alias meets Indiana Jones. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's an adventure story and a spy story kind of but sort of couched in Regency England, which is a period that I've always been fascinated with. So at this mummy unwrapping party, she finds something she's not supposed to, and the story just kind of snowballs from there.
Why do you think ancient Egypt has such a hold on American popular culture? Whether it's the mummy films of the 30s, more recent mummy films, your book is another example.
Yeah.
What's the hook there?
I don't know. There's another author here whose book I'm dying to read, who writes about ancient Egypt as well. As a kid, I was fascinated with that period. My sisters and I it was right up there with Star Wars for us in a lot of ways. And I don't know, I think it's just the mystery of a culture that left so much behind, but yet we still know what the day-to-day was like for those people. And I don't know, I think it's just the mystery of it and the fascination of, the macabre, certainly, of mummification and the tombs and all those pieces. But I don't know, I love it. Apparently other people do too. So
You've had a Fulbright to India.
I did.
Has that translated into your writing yet?
It has. I actually wrote the first draft of Shift while I was living in India. And some characters in there I borrowed from some of the students I was working with while I was there. And I actually, when I was living in India, it was really interesting because people of a certain age, like when I did a semester abroad with Pat Taylor when I was at Western, and who I adore, and was very sad to hear about her passing. But I remember I'd go to a park and to read or study, and I'd sit down to some old man on a bench. And eventually he got around to talking about where he was during the Great War and the Blitz, and just how present that period was in history still for the people of England. But in India, there was kind of an analog to that in the partition, in the area of India where I was living. So the principal had stories about her experience during partition, and kids would tell stories about their parents, and their experiences during partition. And I just started turning up something else. And so that novel will be out next summer. It's another piece of historical fiction set in 1947, right on the eve of the split between Pakistan and India. So,
Jennifer Bradbury, it sounds like an interesting list of books, and rap sounds intriguing. The India book sounds particularly intriguing.
Thank you.
Good luck with a really flourishing career.
Thank you so much.
On Outside the Book, this is David Lee for Western Kentucky University, and our guest has been Jennifer Bradbury, the author of Shift and Wrapped.